I had spent my entire life mastering the tools of business leadership, and it worked. We built this company that grew 3,000%. We won 5 top workplace awards, and we created over $100 million in shareholder value. And despite all of that financial success, I looked in the mirror and saw the leader that I had become. I was a leader with no followers. What had I missed?
I've read 1,000 books. I've interviewed 300 people. This book is not like what anything else that I've read. Nobody's talking about this.
I set out to discover the secret to inspiring followership. And I looked beyond the traditional leadership sources and sought out unconventional communication experts. And it was on this journey that I discovered the talk shifts.
You know, what are you willing to kind of bet it all on? That's the way Krister's been with the book. And it is a great book full of like amazing, super useful tools.
And with the talk shifts, I sought out to connect 2 seemingly disconnected worlds. The world of leadership in business and the world of leadership in relationship. Talk shifts are practical tools, powerful questions, and provocative exercises that can break the cycle of strained communication. And that's why we call them talk shifts, because anybody can pick up the book. You can be a leader, you can be a husband, you can be a wife, you can be a father, a mother, a brother, a sister, and you can use these words, simple shifts, to shift the tone of any relationship, whether it's at work or at home. And what I realized through this whole journey is that while my heart was in the right place, my words were not. And when I started to shift my words, it started to shift my behavior. While these 2 questions of what makes a great leader in the context of a business and what makes a great leader in a context of a family are very different, what connects those 2 questions is that the answer is the same.
Ladies and gentlemen, the goal in your life is not to figure out how to be comfortable in your mental prisons, but to realize that you have the keys to set yourself free. Hey everybody, welcome to How to Be Mesmerizing. It's Tim Shurr, and we have an exciting guest with us. Krister Ungerbock is with us. Krister, welcome to the program.
I'm excited to be here. I don't know. Hopefully we'll find that I will be an exciting guest at the end, but time will tell.
Yes, well, this is going to be a very exciting conversation. So for those of you that might not know who Krister is, he is a global tech CEO. He's gone on to more adventures now, but he ran one of the largest family-owned software companies in the world. And this guy is super sharp. And one of the secrets that you say, Krister, has really helped you to grow your organization like 300 or 3,000%, right? Which is incredible. Or how to have a 99.3% employee satisfaction score. I mean, these numbers are off the charts, right? And you say that it's because of compassionate leadership. What do you mean by compassionate leadership?
Well, first, let me say, a lot of what the greatest insights I learned were actually not while I was CEO of the family-owned software company. Okay. It was about 4 years ago. I left in a big drama. I found myself at the YMCA signing up for gym membership. A woman asked me, "Who's your emergency contact?" And I had no one. And in the 2 weeks prior to that moment, signing up for the gym membership, I had walked out on the CEO job of the company that I'd helped build and loved. And then 2 weeks later, my wife walked out on me. So I had no one.
Oh, wow.
My life vision from when I was 19, I said I wanted to build $1 billion company. So this being a CEO and a successful business person was my identity. And I was probably not unlike some of your viewers and listeners. I was one of those just driven, leaders like, 99% is not good enough. Let's get to 99.9%. And what I found is I started reading business books when I was 12 years old. And I'm sitting there 42 years old at the YMCA signing up for gym membership. And I'm like, where did all these leadership books get me? I'm a leader with no followers. And so I set aside all the business books and I was like, I'm going to go and surround myself with all these people that I've been looking in the wrong places, right? If you want to find surprising secrets, you need to look in surprising, unexpected places. So I hung out with a lot of new age people and people I would have judged back in the day when I was CEO. Now I just call them people from California, and not all of them from California. There's some other people from other countries, but I really was just kept my CEO hat on. Like, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
And so, after 3 or 4 years, I was looking for I think that I was probably not alone, and I was a business leader. And sometimes I would try to take these tools that I learned in leadership and business and I'd try to apply them in family, and it didn't really go over very well, given the end result.
Yeah.
But I was like, what if we could go back the other way? What if the tools that make great leaders in the context of family could also make great leaders in the context of business? Because I've very much proved that being a great leader, the leadership tools in context of business don't necessarily make for great family. And we never really asked ourselves, because most people are like, these are two separate worlds. And what I found is that the tools can go the other way. So I took a lot of the things out of this, frankly, sometimes like touchy-feely world. I applied my kind of more, let's say, hard business mind and kind of translated these tools. Like, how can you take these soft tools and turn them into things that can work in a business setting without coming across as soft? And that was what resulted in this book, 22 Talk Shifts, that I'm cautiously optimistic my vision is to use business as a tool to transform 10 million marriages, leaders, and lives. And I'll shut up in a moment, but there's a very specific reason why that is my not so scientific research is that successful business leaders like myself will read 20 business books before they read a single book about relationships or parenting or whatever. And the challenge is that the research shows that wives are twice as likely to initiate divorce as men, and women tend to be the ones who kind of are the early warning signal for problems in relationships. And by the time wives and women are so frustrated that they're starting to think about leaving, it's too late. And that's why marriage counseling doesn't work. So as business leaders, we need tools before it's too late. And so what if we could write, my whole genesis of this is, what if we could write a leadership book to meet men and strong business women where they are and give them tools in the context of becoming better leaders. Also give them tools that can help them to become better parents and better spouses. And that was really the genesis of this book. It took me 4 years and 5 rewrites to actually get it right.
Yeah.
Because threading the needle and trying to write a business book that's also about relationships is not exactly it certainly hasn't, to my knowledge, hasn't been done well before. So yeah, that's what we're all about.
It's huge. It's huge. I didn't know we were going to go in this direction, but I'm really excited that we are, because
no one ever does, because it's a secret. We don't share publicly that it's actually a book about relationships as well.
Yes. And most people that are looking for how to get ahead in business are not really thinking about their personal relationships. Although I've helped so many executives over the years where all we talked about was their marriage, or all we talked about was their feeling of a disconnect with kids, or feeling guilty when you're at work because you feel like you should be at home. And when you're at home, you feel guilty because you should be working. So you're never feeling good anywhere you go.
Yeah.
And how many spouses will feel like their partner is a hypocrite because they talk about being a leader and being caring and relationship and rapport skills and creating a powerful culture, and they're not seeing any of that at home.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things people I met on the journey, and like I was the only business person in these. I did a lot of crazy workshops. I was like, we won't even go into them, right? But I was often the only business person in the room. A lot of therapists, a lot of people just searching for like their life mission and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I met one woman on the journey. Her and her husband, they were both marriage therapists, and between them, they had 75 or 80 years of marriage counseling.
Mm.
And I just asked the woman, I was like, what is it that wives say on your couch over and over and over again for 40 years? And she told me 5 things. And what struck me is 4 of these phrases that wives say over and over and over again on the marriage counseling couch are exactly the same 4 phrases that a frustrated, unhappy employee would say about their boss. So what if the tools and communication techniques that make for happier employees also make for happier wives?
Hmm. That's very powerful. So do you remember what a couple of those statements were?
I wanted to ask you, like, well, what do you think people say about their, well, I'll just tell you. He doesn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't take my ideas. He always tries to solve my problems for me. And the interesting one is he cares more about the work than he cares about me.
Mm-hmm.
But what she said is often like, what happens is men, and I was one of those men who work 60, 80 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
When we leave on Saturday to go golfing or to go to work, or we work until 8 o'clock, many women conclude that he's not here because he doesn't love me. He loves his work more than he loves me. Mm-hmm. Now, in a work context, it's usually shows up as the boss really only cares about the results that I deliver. He doesn't care about me as a person. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's fundamentally, if you dig down and you kind of scrape a little bit below the surface, it's still the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I talk a lot about the difference between being transactional and transformational. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy to get caught up on all the stuff that has to get done, all the to-do lists and everything. And a lot of times people feel like, your laptop, you care more about your laptop than you do me.
Yeah. Whether
you're in an office or you're in your living room. And it's very powerful, and people don't talk about this, and we should talk about it more. It's interesting. I never thought of it that way, but you said, I want to teach that soft skills doesn't make you soft, because people have this idea in business that you have to be tough as nails and you have to keep everyone at bay. And that's how you end up having a lot of people who may follow you, but you have no one that you could put on your list as emergency contacts.
Well, and that's
a very powerful statement.
As in business, there's ever since Jim Collins published Good to Great, it's like we got to have a vision of how we're going to change the world. And and I do like CEO consulting, and I do strategy, where I actually work with executive teams to build a vision, right? And what I realized on the journey is that the reason people followed me is because I was like, we're going to build $1 billion company. This was my vision since I was 19. And people are like, wow, I want to be part of a vision of building $1 billion company. And we were actually, when I left, we were actually on track to do it before I would retire. So, we were proving that we could achieve this vision. And what I realized on the journey is that people were following the vision, but they weren't following me. And one of my mentors said something, I'll paraphrase it to this. He said, we've been paying people to follow our visions for years, and they would have followed us for free if we had just treated them with kindness and respect and said, thank you for your work.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And people need to hear that more and more and more, because no matter how much we talk about it, that's not what people do. Yeah. Because everyone feels like they're so busy. Well, now the world feels like it's changed. Right before COVID. Right before COVID, all I ever heard from leaders was, I'm too busy to develop my people. I'm too busy to figure out how to help them grow and how to help them to be successful. I barely have time to get all my stuff accomplished. Yeah. So there was no leading with leadership. In fact, a lot of leaders were avoiding situations like that because they didn't feel like they had enough time. And then all of a sudden, now we find ourselves where half the workforce is sitting at home You know, we have all this time. We're still trying to hustle and stay busy and stay focused, but it's a different, you know, world. And a lot of people are like, I don't know if I want to go back to that old way. It was like being on a runaway train and there was no way to get off of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was just this, I've seen since COVID, like, I mean, I'm still in a lot of CEO groups, you know, so I've seen at the senior executive levels of organizations, a degree of caring about the soft skills that I've never, ever experienced in my entire career. Like just seeing like this shift. In fact, actually the inscription to the book was actually delayed. It was actually supposed to be done with my manuscript before COVID hit. And for a number of reasons, like just fortuitous, like the universe has been planning for this book to come out at just the right time. It's been delayed for 3-4 years. And I wrote the inscription to the book is to COVID, despite all the devastation that you've wrought, hopefully the silver lining will be that you sparked the compassion revolution in business. And it came from this moment that I was actually facilitating a CEO, like an executive team strategy session. It was on a Zoom call. It was April 20th. And a young 10-year-old boy popped onto the Zoom window. And this was still pretty early when we were getting used to these Zoom meetings, right? And everyone just softened and was like, oh, and he's like, and he said, Mom, can I have a hug? And everyone just softened. And I just recall thinking like, would this have been okay 6 months ago? And like in that company, it probably would have been okay because the leader had fostered this culture of compassion. But the real question is, would it have been okay in your team a year ago? But even more important is, will it be okay in your team a year from now, right? Zoom invited our leaders into our living rooms and into our lives. And it tore down the walls between our personal and professional worlds. And every leader today needs to ask themselves, will you put the walls back up? Because if we go back to the old way of leading, I mean, like we're squandering an amazing opportunity, right? We've learned these tools of leadership, the tools that I use to build, create $100 million in shareholder value. And yes, that's great business results. They also landed me at the YMCA without an emergency contact. But these tools of leadership were created in the Industrial Revolution 300 years ago. And we're still doing it. And now we have this amazing once in a lifetime opportunity to change leadership. And that's fundamentally sorry, I get like so passionate about this. That's fundamentally why I wrote this book, to give people tools to lead in a new way. And I wish I had had these tools when I was a CEO, because I wouldn't have lost my emergency contact. I wouldn't have walked out on this CEO job of the company that I built and loved, because I would have had tools to connect with my shareholders and my board members who are ultimately my bosses as a CEO, such that we didn't have basically a business divorce after 20 years of working together.
Yeah. Whew, that is powerful. Powerful. We are in a compassion revolution.
Yes.
And you've created a handbook for it, which is pretty amazing. Yes.
So.
Abraham
Lincoln. An amazing team of, admittedly, it's not I created it. Like there were actually like 200, I'm a software guy, so I think of books like software. I had 200 beta readers of the book. And it wasn't until I found one man who is like Neil Strauss is a 7 New York Times bestselling author, who kind of was able to help me thread the needle between how do you write a business book that's also a book about relationships, that business people say, I'm going to read this and I'm going to get great tools that can transform how I lead. And oh, by the way, their spouses who may not even work will want to read it with them. Yeah. Because the spouse can say, hey, these tools will work equally well with our kids and in our relationship with each other. And so I had this editor, this amazing woman who's been behind so many New York Times bestsellers, who helped us really thread the needle and create a book that could really essentially cross categories and sit on the business shelf, and it could sit on the relationship shelf, it could sit on the parenting shelf, which is, I don't know. And she said she's been in publishing for 50 years. She says she doesn't know a book that's actually really been able to do that effectively. And I really credit the team of amazing professionals that I was just so fortunate to find on the journey, and who are willing to walk alongside of me to help this vision, bring this vision to life.
Well, one of the signs of an amazing, mesmerizing leader is giving credit, right? And that's what you're doing right now. So, all right, well, you've got us all excited about this new possibility and how you can improve your teams at work and how you can improve your relationships at home. So what are some of these, your book is called 22 Talk Shifts. Yeah. So can you give me a couple of talk shifts, a couple of examples of what to do in situations like this?
No, I can't. It's all confidential. You have to buy the book.
Thanks for coming on the show, Krister.
Yeah, it's great. I've got another meeting. I need to run. Well, I don't know. So one I'll say is there's 22 talk shifts, but sometimes all it takes is one to change and transform a relationship. So it's not like you really need to do. I mean, I'm still practicing and learning these things and putting them into practice on a day-to-day basis. And so not only do you need to practice them every day, it's just practice them more frequently than we used to. Yeah. To make a big difference. Yeah. Well, I don't know which way you want to go. I mean, do you want to do one that's more on the family side? Do you want to do one that's more on the leadership side? Which direction?
Let's do one on the family side, because my first instinct is to do business. So let's go family. All right. Let's start mixing it up a little bit. So what might be something that you can do for the family?
So I think, the book's broken up in there's an essentials, there's leader shifts is the second section, has about 6 or 7. They're more leadership, and the last section is partnerships, which is the things that are probably more on the soft skills. Mm-hmm. I had an example yesterday, and this being in PTSD and trauma and things like that. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest ones that I found is about emotion, I had a podcast interview with somebody a week ago, and he was a young guy. He's like, my wife says that I'm not a good communicator. And this guy was really talkative. And I'm like, well, you seem to talk a lot. So it's not that you're not saying things. It's that mm-hmm. You're not saying the things that she wants to talk about.
You're not listening.
Yeah. That was probably part of it. But so we talked about, it was really, and he concluded at the end, it was that he wasn't talking about his emotion. Right. And as men, we tend to not be great about emotion. And so all the talk shifts are simple fill in the blanks phrases. I want to give you literally, you could literally say, flip to page 198. Here's the phrase. So you can use it as a handbook for years to come. And so I think it's talk shifts 18 is speak like an emotional Einstein. So what I found is I read Emotional Intelligence, all those books back in the 90s and 2000s. It's been around for 20 years, right? So, but I still wasn't actually communicating my emotions. And part of this is interesting is in English, we actually are more likely to not communicate our emotions, because English has this, I learned French and German as an adult when I opened businesses in Europe. And you don't have this challenge in French and German, because if you look at the word to think in French, which is penser, you don't find as a synonym in a thesaurus the word sentir, which is to feel, right? So many of us, we talk about our thoughts, but in English, I say, I feel that blank. And these are thoughts. If you want to communicate emotions, it only takes 3 words. I feel blank. The next word is an emotion word. I feel sad, I feel happy, I feel angry, and so if we use more than 3 words to describe our emotions, we're almost never talking about emotions. We're talking about our thoughts. I feel like you did that on purpose. So we get fooled as English speakers. And I think that part of this thing about language, like learning French and German as an adult and learning to lead in French and German, was one of the things that informed this talk shifts. Is language is very present in my kind of what I think about. And so, yeah, again, I feel, and then, so the other thing is I found, because I was never really in touch with my emotions, I would actually have coaches in these rooms that they'd be like, Krister, what are you feeling right now? So the question is, I can say, how do you feel? And what do people typically say? Fine, good. These are not emotions. So by shifting the question, we can get an answer. And the question feels a little bit different, but if you do it, you can, as long as you start to kind of socialize people, you can say, what emotion are you experiencing right now? And I can't say the emotion I'm experiencing right now is good. The emotion I'm experiencing right now is fine. Those aren't emotions. They don't fit into that sentence. So we change the sentence and then we change the conversation, right? And that's why talk shifts are these simple fill in the blanks phrases that change conversations.
What would you say then to cause someone to describe an emotion? What question would you ask?
What's the emotion you're experiencing right now? Or if you told me a story about something that happened to you yesterday, I would say, what was the emotion that you were experiencing in that moment?
Yeah, that's very
and
good.
I may even prompt you to say, like, I feel blank. Now, this is a good example. I feel blank. Many corporate environments, they're like, well, we don't talk about our feelings here, right? Maybe it's changed a little bit since COVID. But so I say, well, if in your corporate environment saying I feel blank doesn't fit in the culture, then just say I am blank. But just make sure the next word is a feeling word. Sad, mad, happy, glad, embarrassed, whatever it makes sense.
Yeah. And why wouldn't people talk about their feelings in a company?
Well, I think that, depending on the culture, and I think this is partly maybe the culture doesn't encourage it, right? I think there's also a lot of men are like, we don't like to talk about our feelings, right? So that's why I think the language of I am blank actually removes a little bit of the barrier. Some people just get triggered when they're like, hey, stop talking about your feelings. You're so soft. But if I say I am, I've already removed one of those actually pretty big barriers to that. So I think that's one thing, just not having the language to talk about our feelings in a corporate environment that's acceptable. But on a broader level, if our leaders don't make it okay, one, by talking about their feelings, but also, by encouraging and giving people courage and encouraging people when they do. And so this is one of the reasons that with the book, we actually, people who buy the ebook can actually share specific chapters for free with people, right? So if I want to start a talk shift with you, and for whatever reason, I think that talk shift 18 or whatever is an important one for our communication, whether it's in a marriage or a parenting or at work, then I can just say, hey, let me email you. I bought the book. You can go to talkshift.com/18 and let's talk about this one chapter. Every chapter is short, takes 8 to 10 minutes to read. And then we can use a chapter from the book to start a talk shift or start talking about our words. On a broadly, the next thing is next month in November, I'm doing something that is surprising. I'm surprised that no one has done this before. I only know 2 people who have actually done it. We're doing a video book. And it sounds like really, really boring, but but it's got footage, so it like keeps it visually engaging. There's also a lot of these phrases will appear on the screen, so it increases recall. But the important thing is why I did a video book is because in the context of a family, imagine the possibility of giving your entire family the gift of a talk shift, a gift of different language ways. Like my kids are 11 and 12. I'm like, we could watch this together. They're not going to read the book, but we can watch it on television together and we can talk about it as it's going. And it's COVID, so we're all looking for something to watch to make the time pass, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have any anticipation. As a leader, I would never be like, let me pull the team in and let's sit around and watch 2-hour movie, right? Never going to happen. That's why the book is useful for more of a leadership context. What we're finding is spouses, especially women who tend to be the canary in the coal mine of knowing like what's going on in a relationship, can say, hey, honey, let's sit down and let's watch this movie. Let's move this video book with the kids. We're going to give them new ways to communicate with us and ourselves, new ways to communicate with them, and new ways to communicate with each other. And if one of the spouses works, I assume one of them, if not both work, we're also going to learn tools that can make us more successful in business so that we can afford a bigger house and have nicer things for our kids. And for me, I once said that like everything I learned about transforming marriages, I learned from Mary Poppins. It's a spoonful of sugar that makes the medicine go down. Because I don't know about you. I don't know. There's a lot of guys that are like, marriage book? I'd love to read a marriage book. Not really happening. So by taking great leadership tools that do lead to business success and also wrapping them, the book is probably 60 to 80% is the examples are more in a leadership context. But what happens is when what we find is when typically the female in the relationship follows along the man, she brings the perspective and say, hey, you know, the examples in this chapter were about encouraging employees and how to get more from employees and get them more engaged. But you know, these same phrases can be used with our kids to encourage our kids in sports and in school. And so I found one woman who, yeah, she read it. She was a realtor, very successful realtor. And she said she used to be a leader some years ago before she became a realtor. And she goes, wow, it was nice to see what I could have done, you know, as a team leader in my old corporate job. But even more exciting was how I actually was applying these tools, your business examples, in how I am as a mom.
Yeah. 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 I've heard that for years. You know, I'll give a keynote on, you know, at some business conference, and then someone will pull me aside and talk about how I need to apply this. I've got a situation I'm dealing with my son and his soccer coach. And after listening to you, I need to adjust my approach, or how I've been only focusing on what they're getting wrong in their schooling and their studies. I haven't reinforced what they're doing right. I never heard the idea that, you know, reinforce what you want to see more of.
Yeah.
You know, I've always been focused on what, you know, that was a B+, it should have been an A. It's an A, it should have been an A+. Kind of like what you said in the very beginning.
Oh,
you know, we got a 99%, let's get 99.9.
Yeah.
Right. And well, what's the cost to get that?
Yep.
Right. Because there's going to be a cost. And a lot of times the cost is we sacrifice the relationship. In any interaction, you're either strengthening or weakening relationships. And so this is very exciting. Now, we talked a little bit about trauma, right? We've talked about, you know, I've spent decades helping people with trauma and post-traumatic stress and anxiety, and helping them as a coach. And you've had experiences with this as well. So tell me a little bit about your experience. You say that often, just by that sometimes the emotional experiences, the pain, the hurt, the feeling of injustice, or shame or guilt gets stuck inside of us as pent up emotion that then just can destroy our health and our mental well-being. So tell me a little bit about how you got involved with that and where you're at with it now.
Yeah. So I think I had a call a couple of weeks ago with one of the leading researchers in the world around trauma. And we actually had a little bit of an argument on this. I mean, he's a researcher on it. So I was like trying to take my business mind, and he was one of the people who actually disagreed very strongly that the tools that could make for successful business could also make for successful families. But we talked a little bit about trauma. And so I think the challenge is, I said, Bessel, like, the challenge is that we use this word trauma. And for me, I mean, I didn't have, like, you know, it often conjures up like abusive relationships, like there's like or PTSD, like, you know, people who've been to war or whatever. And you mentioned it on the pre-call, like there's big T trauma. That's the, you know, like your life was threatened or some kind of thing. But the really for me, the more difficult part was what they call little T trauma, which is these emotional trauma. It's like, I was never beaten as a child. I didn't have this, but I had a father, probably not unlike, and admittedly, I would have become this father if I had not gone down this path. He was just like 99%, like, you're going to be good. You know, like, imagine like Tiger Woods' father, right? You know, he was my understanding from whatever reason, he was very demanding. And yeah, so he created Tiger Woods, this amazing golfer. But he also created the person who had all those challenges like 10, 15 years ago, right? And so I had this father who drove me, and there was a lot of good business success that came out of it. But we had a terrible toxic relationship for 30 years. In fact, actually, it was only on book launch day. I actually spent my book launch day with my dad. And I actually asked him the question. I said, what would it look like if we were friends? I can't even imagine actually asking my father, what would it look like if we were friends?
That's a powerful question.
And I was so trapped in the victim mindset of my father. Was constantly, he despite the fact that I graduated from college at age 20 and I was the youngest person ever to work for one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world, and we built this company with $100 million in shareholder value, he never said, good job. Never. Not once. Not even after I asked him 3 years ago and I said, Dad, you know what would really, really make a big difference to me? Is if you just said, hey, you did a good job. So this is little T trauma, and leaders do it all the time. I actually had a call yesterday with an employee that used to work for me. She was one of my favorite employees. I hired her. She was one of these people that she graduated from college at age 19. Amazing, brilliant individual. She sent me this. She read she read the book, literally like bought it, read it, the whole thing the same day. And she sent me this long email. Started off with, hey, here's some things that I asked her if she had any feedback to make the book better. And she had some ideas because we're going to do another edition next year. And then she just had this long email of some stuff that happened, while I was not leading her directly, but I was her boss's boss as the CEO. I think these things happened 7 years ago. She works for another company and she's still holding on to them. Mm-hmm. Like someone told her that, you're going to go undergo disciplinary action and we're going to do an investigation. And I was like, do you know if I said those words? Like, I don't know. I mean, I said a lot of words. I had no idea. Like, my heart was always in the right place, but I realized my words were not. And it wouldn't surprise me if I used those words with you. You're going to go disciplinary action and be investigated. She said, well, no, you didn't actually use those words to me, but someone in the middle layers of management kind of communicated that I was being investigated and maybe I was going to get fired. This was like a top performing employee. And we had like a 14-minute conversation. She's been holding on to this little T trauma for 7, maybe even 10 years.
Wow.
And I said to her, I won't say her name. I said, I'm sorry. You are so strong and courageous for sending me that long email that you sent and sharing all of the feelings and the hurt and how that created for you. And I never could have done this even like 2 years ago. And I was just silent because I knew it was going to happen. And like 10 seconds later, her voice was cracking and she said, thank you. Because I knew in that 10 seconds, she was crying. And she was finally letting go of that hurt. So I'm not even her boss anymore. I'm not even her boss's bosses anymore. She's on to a new company. She enjoys it. She gets great feedback from her bosses. Ironically, in a company that actually has a very, very harsh culture. And I said, I thank you so much, and I appreciate for you sending me that just email, that raw email. And it's, you're so strong. And she goes, well, I was never really one to kind of just back down. And I said, you're right. You're very strong. Yeah, I said, you know that, right? She paused. And I don't know if she started crying again. And I said, you know that. You already know that, right? You've always known that. And then we got off the call. And she was free.
Wow. Yeah.
What we do as leaders, we can have an amazing impact on the lives of the people who we lead. And it can be a positive impact, or like that situation, it can be a negative impact. And the interesting thing is almost all of my other interactions with that individual were positive. But that one little thing, 2 weeks in a 15-year career with my company, she held on to it for 7 to 10 years. Sorry, it's pretty raw. It was yesterday. So it was one of my highlights of the day yesterday. So,
wow.
I could have never had that conversation 5 years ago. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know how to do it. I would have been uncomfortable knowing that somebody's crying.
Yeah. Well, wow. I mean, I really appreciate you sharing that story. It's incredible. And I really feel like anybody that's a leader in any capacity It should be required listening to listen to this interview, right? Because you have somebody who is a smart, technical, highly driven, software CEO, right? Which you would think is, is very analytical in that way. And you admit you were.
I still am.
That's right. And still are. That's right. However, what you have found to be the secret to creating joy in your life, the secret to creating happiness and prosperity and success for you, is how you how you connect with the people in your life, right? How you connect with those and have the ability to say, you know what, if I made a mistake, I'm sorry. This was just so powerful because your experience with your father, him not saying that to you was actually a gift. I know it sucked in the moment and you're like, you gotta be kidding me. Are you that dense? Seriously. Yeah. Right. However, it left a mark on you of how that feels. And every time for the rest of your life, when you find yourself in a situation with someone where they desperately need to hear something and you have the ability to step in and say those words of validation, like you are strong, it, right? To just that validation. I call it love. And my acronym is LUV, listen to, understand, and validate.
Yeah.
All day long. We see people who are successful and driven and confident, but I find that often high achievers vacillate between confidence and anxiety, right? Trying to prove themselves at some level, trying to prove that they're enough. And that's why, the status quo is never enough. It's not about being happy or sad or feelings. It's about momentum. Are we making progress? There's momentum, right? That's why people call it Shark Tank, because if sharks stop swimming, they drowned, right? And and we have this idea that we have to keep charging forward, but we run over people.
I wonder what the ratings would have been if they called it Kitten Tank.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why we have to find the balance.
Yeah.
Right. I like the word leader shifts. I like the idea about talk shifts and how you can be wildly successful and at the same time talking about the power of words and relationships. Yeah. That is not soft. That is powerful. Yeah. We need to have a new understanding of what masculinity really is. It's not about being tough. It's about being able to step up in a situation that makes you vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Brene Brown talks a lot about that, but because she's a female, a lot of guys aren't paying attention. Yeah. And then we do the same things. We make the same mistakes over and over, thinking that we have to be tough and we have to fight and we have to roll over people and we have to watch your own back because nobody else will have your back. Who'd you get that from? A parent who, acted the same way and had no friends. Right? So you end up having a bunch of money and a bunch of stuff and no one to share it with.
I agree. When I first started kind of on this road, like Brene Brown's work probably was really a turning point. Like I read it probably weeks after that, a combination of weeks before and weeks after that YMCA moment. And there was a part of me that was like, I see exactly what you're saying, because she's a woman, men and male executives aren't going to get it. And so you talked about soft skills, and obviously I kind of got a little teared up. Well, maybe not a little teared up, probably a lot teared up.
You were verklempt.
And my son is he's 11, and he cries during movies. Mm-hmm. And he's got a sister. My daughter is mm-hmm. 12, and she's mm-hmm. The older one. So she's always kind of like just any older child is always kind of. And we were watching the movie The Avengers, and Iron Man died.
Oh yeah.
My son, he was kind of like hiding, and I know him enough. I was like, "Hey, buddy, are you crying?" He was kind of hiding his tears because he didn't want his sister to see. He didn't want me to see. And I kind of let it go. And then later that night, I said, "Buddy, it's okay to cry." And I said, and I taught him how to cry like a man. And I said, "Son," I don't call him son. I said, "Buddy, when you cry, don't hide your tears. Just look directly at the person and let the tears stream down your face." Because
Wow.
what you'll find is that the other person will probably be the person to look away, because it's not you who needs to be afraid of your tears. It's them who fears your tears. And I was like,
That's so good. I got tingles everywhere. Oh my
yeah.
God.
And literally, if there are men watching this and they say, wow, you know, it's weak to show your tears and to cry in front of people, then let me suggest to you that you have never looked into the face of a person or in the face of a camera with thousands of people on the other side and tried it yourself. Because it takes a lot more courage to cry and let the tears go. And we need to stop telling our children that boys and little girls don't cry. We need to start teaching them to cry like big girls and big men. So don't you dare tell my son that boys don't cry.
I love this. I love that, you taught him how to cry like a man. I mean, that is just so powerful. I remember I was working in psychiatric unit, and it was inpatient, and I was running a group, and it was for kids. And there was a 10-year-old boy, still see his face clear as day. And he had 2 bright red patches of raw skin under his eyes. And I didn't know what was going on. So, I was leading a group talk, and we were talking about, our feelings and how we feel about ourselves and our parents, and a tear started rolling down his cheek, and he immediately wiped it away as fast as he could so no one would see it. And he was wiping his tears so fast that he rubbed away the skin under his eyes. And I asked him why he did that. And he said, privately to me, he said that my dad beats me if I cry, right? Because that's not being a man. You got to have machismo, men don't cry. And I thought that was the worst lesson you could ever teach, because it's about being authentic. Real men are authentic. Real men are showing up who they are without pretending they have to be someone else, right? And that's what, we have to have a whole new discussion of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a leader, and what it means to build trust. And there's so many poor examples of leadership that are happening in our world right now, in so many levels. And it's just really, really unfortunate. However, I think that we are in this zeitgeist now. We have this new opportunity in human history where we are turning a corner, and we are recognizing the value of compassion, the value of kindness, the value of being driven to empower people and help people feel good about themselves. And that's how you make more money.
Yeah.
Right. The old styles of, even in the military, leadership is starting to change a little bit. I've talked to a lot of Marines over the years and special forces, and people who are saying, yeah, even the way that they're communicating in the military, which is very, male dominant and and testosterone filled, and my way or the highway, even that is adjusting a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Because we need to value each other more.
Well, you talked about this little boy and his father beat him.
Mm-hmm.
This is the big themes with being between big T trauma and little T trauma.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize that there's some percentage of the population who don't realize that physically hurting their children and hurting people is wrong, or more likely they can't control their own impulsive anger, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just fists and punches that hurt. Sometimes words hurt more.
Many times words hurt more.
So,
yeah.
I think that he's probably not the only father who beats his son for crying. He's just one of the smaller percentage that beats him with his fists. There's a lot of men that beat people up for crying with their words.
Well said. That's exactly what happens. And it is more, I would go as far enough to say that almost everybody has experienced it. Almost every single human being. The biggest fear that I've noticed, and I've done tens of thousands of sessions with people, and the biggest fear is that I'm not enough. Mm-hmm. Now, we were not born with that idea that I'm not enough. Yeah. So where did it come from? Yeah. And it comes from our family's insecurity, our parents trying to do the best that they can, but they usually are not enlightened, right? We get it from our government. We get it from the television and social media now, right? We get it from religion. We get it from everywhere, that somehow in some way I'm not enough. So if you want to make something of yourself in business, you have to prove that you're enough, which means you don't sleep. You take it. No one's going to give it to you. You don't share information. And all the problems that most businesses have are people problems.
Yeah.
And people problems means communication problems, and communication problems means unconscious beliefs and biases that are holding us back that were learned.
We need to stop. When I was CEO, you said we had 99.3% employee engagement, and we had a great culture, and I'm very proud of that. And but what I realized in the journey, especially today, the way things, we need to stop talking about employee engagement, and we need to start talking about employee connection. So it's because when we create employee connection, there's a reason that woman read my book despite this really negative experience that she had, that was maybe not directly a result of my actions, but certainly indirectly. Because we had connection. And when we build these deeper connections, that builds a bond that is so much stronger than a pizza party or a ping pong table or a bonus program or whatever it is. Creating deeper bonds with employees is what's going to keep them when they, I'd say it's in the book, part of this impetus for the compassion revolution is that LinkedIn is making it easier to find a new workplace. Glassdoor is making toxic workplaces you can't hide anymore, right? And millennials are demanding a new breed of leadership. All it takes is someone just saying, you know what, I'm going to respond to that recruiter email that I got on LinkedIn today. And so the thing that's going to keep our best employees with us is connection. It's not engagement. It's not some, So we build these emotional bonds, and when we build these emotional bonds, people will give us latitude when we make mistakes that hurt them. And that is the same thing that we need in families.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Engagement in the workplace, that's code for how do I get people to work harder? How do I get more out of them? How do I get even more discretionary effort, which means I want you to work twice as much without me having to pay you for it. Now, there is only one way to do that. And that is if people feel valued and they feel like they're a part of something and it makes them feel significant. And that happens through the connections.
Yes.
It's very powerful. Krister, this has just been an extraordinary conversation. How can people find out more about you and your book and your programs?
The best way is to go to talkshift.com. You can buy the book there. You can, of course, get it on Amazon. If you get it on the website, there's actually exclusive bonus materials that you can't get on Amazon, exclusive interviews. And if you have, really the big choice is if you're looking for just leadership tools that you want to be a better leader and work with your team, then the book is probably one of the best tools to get it there. But if you're really looking at also practicing these things with your children and your spouse, then the video book that's why we built it, for families to use these tools to create a shift and give their children a gift of a new way of communicating that they'll be able to use the rest of their lives. And I'm hopeful that we can make a little dent in I was going to go on to another topic, but we're wrapping up, so I'll just leave it there.
And I think that we're going to make a dent in some of the suffering that's happening in the world. There's a lot of suffering that's happening in pain. In this human world, we're going to experience pain. There's no getting around it. But there's so much unnecessary suffering, needless suffering. And people would choose something better if they had the right tools. And you're providing them some very powerful tools that are also very easy to use, and you're giving it to them in the 21st century way of being, cutting edge, a visual book. You're taking it to the next level. You're taking a movie and making it interactive, but not just a movie where you watch it and then an hour of your life is gone. You're taking to 15 minutes, and then it transforms your relationships and the connection you have with the people that are most important to you in your life for the rest of your life. And that is mesmerizing. Thank you very much, everybody. Oh my gosh, this is absolutely the conversation and the episode with Krister Ungerbock that you need to share with every single leader on your team. And if you happen to be a parent, you should be sharing it with them too. Watch this with your spouse. This is life-changing stuff. Krister, thanks so much for being a part of the program. Everybody, thanks for being here with us today. Holy cow, another mesmerizing conversation. Make sure that you go to talkshift.com, get the book, get the resources, watch those videos, implement this in your company, in your family, and in your life, and make today a mesmerizing success. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. Hey, it's Tim. Are you ready to be inspired by the world's greatest motivational speakers? Witness history as the legends of business and personal growth share with you their best strategies for how to be profitable in our new economy. Go to legendsummit.com. That's legendsummit.com. I'll see you there.